What's up, chess players? You like this series so much because I roast your games, I completely crush it, destroy it, and tell you that you can't play chess, but I hope that it's also very instructive for you. So today we are gonna take another game that one of my subscribers played, and it was a King's Indian Defense, very fancy opening, so it's gonna be very interesting to take a look at it. So let's take a look. d4, g6, and bishop g7. I mean, the whole purpose of the King's Indian Defense to make this bishop very powerful here along the long diagonal, and let's learn how to use it correctly. So e6. e6, I would say, the first mistake of this game. Even though the engine says, well, it's a completely normal move, you can play it, what's wrong with that? But from a positional point of view, you don't want to play g6 and e6, because that creates a lot of weaknesses on the dark squares. And yes, for the time being, you have this bishop, which covers pretty much all of the weaknesses, but in general, you don't want to combine those two moves. The normal way to approach it is to play d6, because then you don't really have any weaknesses at all, and this bishop is also opened one, because after e6, what do you do with this bishop? I mean, yeah, you should probably develop it here, but then why do you need this move e6? It just doesn't make any sense to have it together. So, but of course, it's not a huge mistake, it's just a small inaccuracy. Still, this e6 move doesn't help you at all. Now b6, okay, the bishop is going there, and white is making a huge mistake here, playing c5. Like, before you have developed your pieces, before you have made the castles, don't make those stupid things. I mean, even afterwards, don't make stupid things, but here it's just so counterintuitive. I mean, your bishop is still not developed, your king is still not castled, and you're playing c5, you're making another move with the same piece or pawn which has already been developed, and it doesn't bring you anything. In the end of the day, you're just gonna have a weakness here. And also you're opening up this diagonal for the bishop. The bishop is just waiting here and saying, well, now the whole road is open for me. Isn't that perfect? I mean, you're just helping your opponent so much. And I'm referring, of course, to your opponent. By the way, it was Aracanius Infinius who played this game as black here, my subscriber. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. Most probably not. Yeah, but the point is, you can never do that. It's just so wrong, so counterintuitively here in terms of some chess principles. I mean, you have a center. Center is very solid. Everything is protected. Just develop your pieces. Don't make any unnecessary moves with the pawns. The only purpose you are making the moves with the pawns in the beginning of the game is to control the center and to let your pieces be developed. Like you're playing this move e3 to let your light squares bishop to be developed. That's all. You just don't need any other pawn moves. Sometimes you play h3 just to make sure that your king has another luft to go. Or you play h3, I don't know, to start some attack, but that happens afterwards. First, just develop your pieces, please. I mean, that's one thing that I always ask you to do, develop your pieces. And it's not difficult. I mean, why would you play c5 here? And of course, that guy is not watching my channel, but hopefully one day he's gonna hear it. Okay, c5, takes, and bishop a6. I pretty much like this move, because that is developing a new piece. I don't know, maybe myself, I wouldn't prefer to exchange it. I would prefer to leave it on the board, because I like having the bishops so much, because it's so powerful along this long diagonal. But bishop a6 is also fine, because if it's going to be exchanged, then the knight is going to be developed, and that is exactly what happened. Now you're attacking the c5 pawn, and you're reusing the weakness that your opponent has created. And that is why white played c6 here, sacrificing the pawn, but at least trying to say, okay, I'm gonna destroy your pawn structure, I'm gonna compromise it, and then in the distant future, I'm gonna try to attack it. And that is quite an interesting strategy, to be honest. Also here, maybe queen to a4 was a nice move to go. So if you are some material down, don't exchange your pieces. Also, very simple principle, because here this queen is a good way to create some threats for your opponent, to deal with those targets somehow. The knight is hanging, the pawn is hanging, very good thing here. And maybe that means that you don't need to take the c6 pawn. Maybe you should just play d5 and leave this pawn there. You say, okay, that's a very weak pawn, and one day I'm gonna just take it somehow, but my pawn structure is very solid here, that then I don't need to destroy it in the first place. So not always, even if you get some extra material, you should do it. Always try to assess what you get and what you lose. and if this balance is in your favor, then you should go for it. But if it's not, if yes, you're an extra pawn, but first of all, those pawns are doubled. Secondly, it's isolated, and you also have a lot of weaknesses here, then don't do it. Then just enjoy your very healthy pawn structure, and this pawn is still a weakness. You don't have any problems at all. So yeah, that would be a very good setup. So takes, but for some reason white decided to take the queen, and that is a horrible mistake, because in the endgame it's much simpler for black to deal with those weaknesses. And also, of course, the king is not in trouble anymore. Castles, castles, 95. Yeah, still white is trying to attack here. That is something I like, trying to put some pressure on those weaknesses. If you don't put the pressure on your opponent, you're never gonna win the games. Rook d6, protecting it. Yeah, I mean, that's a possible way to go, but that allows your opponent to play knight c4 and try to chase your rook forever. I mean, that's attacking the rook, you go back, the knight will go back, and of course you don't want a draw. I mean, your position is better, you're one pawn up, you don't want to make a draw, so don't even allow those possibilities for your opponent. You can just, I mean, your pawn is under attack, just push it forward, and yeah, the pawn is protected, everything is protected, this knight is coming to b4, you control the d file, everything is good, and one day maybe even uses bishop against the knight here along the long diagonal. So rook d6 has been played, knight c4, yeah, exactly what I said, and after rook d7, that is what you played. Your opponent could have just played 95, and I really hope that you wouldn't make a draw in this position, because that would be so sad for me. You're a pawn up, you have more activity, and yeah, you definitely don't want to make a draw. Okay, but instead, for some reason, white has played rook to d1. I don't know why, because it's just bringing the piece back. Instead of just attacking, you're defending here suddenly. So that is a very weird setup. And yeah, rook d8 is a fine way to use it, because now you once again have an active rook, you control this open file, and the knight is under attack. And instead of developing a new piece, which would be great for white, white is playing knight to c3, which is a huge mistake, because from a positional point of view, it just not developing any new pieces, just making the I don't know, the third move is the same piece, which is something you should always try to avoid. If you play bishop d2, now you have suddenly developed almost everything. Even this rook is finally taking some part, at least it's defending the knight here. Now if you do that, then the rook is not participating in the game at all, the bishop is not participating, and also if that is the case, then the chance is so huge that your opponent is going to have some tactical opportunities, like in this case with knight e4. But even if knight e4 wouldn't be possible, and I'm going to explain you why it's so strong, still, it's just, from a positional point of view, you just never do that. You always try to develop a new piece with your every move. Knight e4, why is it so strong? Because it's attacking the knight, because it's opening up the bishop. Now all of black pieces are very strong, this knight is also about to jump in, and you can take this knight because of checkmate in one. That's very, very simple idea here, but there is no way to deal with it. Because if you do nothing, then I'm gonna just take on c3, at least win a pawn, still rook d1 is coming, pinning the bishop. I mean, that is just game over. And also bishop d2 is no longer available, because the bishop would be hanging. So if you play bishop d2 here, knight e4 is still strong, but at least you have some time to play bishop e1, and at least your rook is participating in the game, and you might be able to push the knight away, and the b2 pawn is well protected, so that is not a concern. Okay, so knight c3 has been played, knight e4, bishop d2 is now a huge mistake, because you're just losing the bishop, but there was no real way to save it. Yeah, and now all of the pieces are going to be lost, and of course, yeah, now it's just a checkmate. So overall, you might say that my subscriber played a pretty good game, and I could agree with that. Maybe just this d takes c move here is a very good moment to learn something new out of this game, because yeah, it's just a positional mistake. You don't want to compromise your pawn structure without any reason. You have the move d5, and then everything is still great for you. So I hope you have learned something out of this game, because yeah, this move d5 was a very important moment. Instead of taking the pawn, if you don't need to compromise your pawn structure, then don't do it. And in this video, I share with you a very, very important idea that if you don't know, you're gonna lose so many games, so definitely take a look at it.